Imagine having to replace your mailbox 4 times in 1 week, each time crushed by the same silver SUV with HOA logos plastered on the side, as if it were some kind of neighborhood badge of honor. I filed complaints. I put up cameras. I even tried talking to the so-called neighborhood patrol face-to-face, and all I got were those condescending looks, a little smirk that said everything I needed to know. By the 5th time, I'd had enough. That night, I stayed up in my garage until 2 in the morning with just a few tools and an idea that, honestly, I was certain they'd never see coming. You see, 3 years ago, I thought I'd finally found peace. After 2 decades working as a military engineer, surrounded by gunfire and explosions, I bought 15 acres of farmland way out on the edge of what used to be a quiet rural community. The plan was simple: grow some vegetables, fix up old tractors, and maybe, finally, get some sleep without wondering if a mortar round was going to land outside my window. And for exactly 3 months, that plan worked. Then Veronica Shaw showed up at my front door, clipboard in hand, smile so fake it practically squeaked, radiating the kind of authority complex that turns a suburban neighborhood into somebody's personal fiefdom. Veronica represented the Meadowbrook Heights HOA, even though, technically, my property sat outside their jurisdiction by about 50 yards. Didn't seem to bother her. She stood on my porch in her spotless white blazer, surveying my land like a general inspecting the troops, and told me my rustic wooden mailbox was violating the aesthetic standards required for our premium residential area. I looked at the mailbox, just a simple cedar post with a metal box my late wife, Sarah, picked out on our last hardware store trip together. It was functional, weather-resistant, legal as far as the post office cared, and most importantly, it was mine, bothering nobody except, apparently, the self-appointed guardians of suburban perfection. I politely declined to replace it with something more community-appropriate. That's when her smile turned cold, like she'd just been handed a challenge she didn't want but couldn't walk away from. She mentioned the HOA had significant influence with local officials, and maybe I should reconsider, for the sake of community harmony. I thanked her, watched her silver Lexus disappear down the gravel, and just like that, I knew this wasn't our last dance. You spend 20 years in the military, you learn to spot escalation a mile away. Veronica had just fired the warning shot. A week later, first casualty. My mailbox, splintered wood, metal bent at a 45-degree angle, tire tracks in the mud so obvious you could see the make and model. Standing there, looking at the wreckage, up rolls Marcus Henderson in the silver HOA SUV. He gets out, wearing the kind of apologetic look that doesn't quite reach his eyes, and says he accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake while adjusting his radio. He was still grinning like a kid who just pulled off the prank of the year. I replaced the mailbox with the same setup, but added a tiny camera disguised as a birdhouse. 2 days later, boom, mailbox number 2. Same time, same SUV, same accident. The footage showed Marcus making a turn so wide, he practically aimed for the mailbox, again, just in time for a big HOA meeting down the road. By the 3rd time, annoyance gave way to something else. 20 years of engineering teaches you, when accidents happen with this kind of precision, they're not accidents anymore. I filed a complaint with the county sheriff, dropped off photos, timestamps, everything. Sheriff Blake listened with the enthusiasm of a guy waiting for his lunch order and suggested maybe I should move my mailbox further from the road. Accidents happen, he said, especially on country roads. Yeah, sure. Mailbox number 4 met its end on a Thursday morning, this time caught by 3 cameras. The SUV didn't even slow down. I submitted everything to the sheriff, the county, the postal service. Got a form letter back. Thank you for your concern. This matter will be investigated in due course. That night, standing in the rain, I realized traditional channels weren't going to solve this. Veronica wasn't just being a pain. She'd chosen the battlefield. Little stuff, under the radar, just enough to make you want to give up. But here's the thing about people like Veronica. They're not used to someone playing a longer game. I spent that night in my garage, sketching out Mailbox 2.0. The idea was simple. If they wanted to keep playing bumper cars with my property, I'd build something that could take a hit and hit back. I had military savings, engineering know-how, and a stubborn streak they hadn't counted on. By morning, I had blueprints for a mailbox that looked exactly like the old one, but was built like a bunker. Cameras went up, real ones this time. The next morning, Marcus drove past, nice and slow, staring at the cameras. No mailbox destruction that day, but now my gate was left open, trash tossed in the yard, fence posts loosened. The message was clear. If brute force didn't work, harassment would just get creative. Let me back up a sec. Here's where the twist comes in. That afternoon, at the county courthouse, a tired clerk named Janet handed me patrol route maps. There it was. The HOA's official patrol route took a weird detour, right past my place, even though I wasn't a member. They'd literally drawn a target around my property and filed it as government paperwork. I went back to Sheriff Blake. He shrugged, told me public roads were public, and implied I should stop being a problem. That's when I met Jenny Walsh, the HOA's admin secretary, showed up at my door at sunset, glancing over her shoulder like she was in a spy movie. She'd seen what was happening, said my mailbox wasn't the only one. Over the last year and a half, 7 families had been driven out the same way. She handed me a sheet of HOA emails, enhanced monitoring for properties that didn't fit community standards. Mine, a couple rural spots, some retirees' homes. Each was marked for immediate attention. This was coordinated. And Jenny? She'd just been put on the same list for missing a meeting while caring for her sick mom. Help me, help us, she said. Because I can't fight this alone. Now the dots started to connect. The HOA wasn't just annoying people. They were surveilling, documenting, and building cases. Then, cross-referencing property records. I found it. Every family forced out ended up selling their property, below market value, to the same shell company. The pattern was so neat it made my skin crawl. The mailbox wasn't the battle. It was the opening salvo in a hostile takeover. The next morning, I drove by 3 of the homes that had been forced out. All under renovation, all owned by the same contractor, all getting prepped for luxury sales. Someone was making a killing. Probably thought they'd add my 15 acres to their collection next. So I went all in. Set up a military-grade surveillance system, AI facial recognition, the whole works. Within a week, it ID'd not just Marcus but 2 other HOA patrol drivers. Every time they patrolled, the AI tracked their routes, body language, everything. All the data lined up with Jenny's docs. Every mailbox hit, every trash dump, every fence tampering, scheduled, deliberate, not random. I spent nights in the garage, welding steel beams for the new mailbox. Poured a 3-foot concrete foundation, rebar, a steel I-beam disguised as wood, spring-mounted so it'd flex, and then snap back, transferring all the force down into the foundation. From the street, just another mailbox. To a speeding SUV, a brick wall. That's when things escalated. Jenny called. Her own house got a foreclosure notice for unpaid HOA fees. Totally fabricated. Turns out, an elderly neighbor, Emily Watson, was facing the same thing. Emily, 78, alone, fixed income, perfect target. I looked through their documents. Fraudulent fees, signatures didn't match, dates doctored. This was industrial-scale fraud, and it had pushed 12 families out in 3 years, every time for a fraction of the real value. So I added GPS trackers to the mailbox. If it got hit again, law enforcement would have real-time data, no more plausible deniability. Sure enough, Tuesday morning, there's Marcus, silver SUV, same routine. But this time, when he hit the mailbox at 40 miles an hour, the crunch was epic. Mailbox didn't move. SUV folded like a soda can. Cameras caught it all. GPS pinged law enforcement. AI flagged it as a deliberate act. Marcus was still in his seat, dazed, cell phone to his ear. "She wants to see you," he said, voice shaking. 30 minutes later, Veronica rolled up, suit pressed, eyes like knives, radiating corporate damage control. She started yelling, accused me of building a public hazard. I reminded her, "Hey, this is on my property, and unless you're crashing into it, there's no hazard." She let slip, on camera, that she needed me out so they could complete their community improvement project. Claimed people like me don't belong. She detailed how my refusal was blocking a luxury development worth millions, and, get this, offered to buy me out at 60% of market value. Thanks but no thanks. By now, I had enough evidence to sink a battleship, surveillance logs, confessions, financial records, you name it. I teamed up with Jenny and Emily. We organized, gathered the other victims, and went public. Social media exploded. Local news picked it up. Turns out, a bunch of folks had been quietly forced out. Now they came forward, receipts in hand. Within a week, state investigators showed up. Jenny's inside knowledge and my data made for a hell of a 1-2 punch. Veronica's shell company, owned by her husband, run through layers of LLCs, raked in over $2 million in 3 years. The feds found similar scams in other states. $12 million easy. The trial was something else. Packed courtroom, TV crews, Judge Morrison presiding. Veronica's lawyer tried to frame me as some kind of vigilante with a vendetta, claiming my mailbox was a trap. Judge wasn't having it. I laid out every detail: GPS data, video, property records, shell companies, and, best of all, internal HOA emails. Even the jury looked stunned. When Veronica took the stand, her arrogance did her in. She bragged about enhancing property values, acted like targeting families for harassment was a community service. Then she admitted, on record, that her family's companies bought the homes after residents voluntarily relocated. Judge Morrison dropped the hammer. 5 years federal prison, $500,000 in fines. HOA dissolved under federal oversight. Jenny made interim admin restitution for every victim. Legal precedent set. No more hiding behind HOA bylaws for criminal activity. In the months that followed, my mailbox got famous. Tour buses, news crews, even a local nickname. Fort Knox of mailboxes. Jenny and I started the Malister Foundation, using my military savings to help others fight back. Emily became our unofficial grandma, hosting workshops for seniors, teaching them how to document harassment before it got out of hand. Our case got studied in law schools, picked up by property rights groups, and downloaded thousands of times by folks fortifying their own mailboxes. HOA fraud dropped off a cliff wherever our story aired. People realized you didn't have to take abuse from authorities just because they had a fancy title and a clipboard. Sometimes I wonder what Sarah would think. Probably shake her head, call me stubborn, but smile anyway. The truth is, I'd do it all again. Because this wasn't just about a mailbox. It was about proving that power doesn't mean you get to bully people out of their homes. And if you're reading this, maybe you or someone you know is fighting the same battle. You're not alone. So, tell me, what's the worst injustice you've seen in your own neighborhood? Where's the line between community standards and outright abuse? Drop your story in the comments. If you believe ordinary folks can stand up to corrupt systems, hit subscribe, share this, and let's make sure no one ever feels powerless again.